This is Mission Park West. I've been running laser tag games here since 2006, and I just wanted to show you a few notable spots in the park, as well as later on do a walkthrough of this place. Now it's pretty big, so this video will be a lot shorter. This is kind of the Cliff Notes version of Mission Park West, so let's get started. You wouldn't think it, but this is probably the most important part of the entire park. And that's because this is where we meet. This is where things get started. Just on the opposite side of the camera is the road where people park, and the sign for Mission Park West is right over there. There's some grills over here, a trash can, plenty of seating. We hand out gear here, get games started from up here, have our cookouts up here. It's pretty much the central location for getting things started and for meeting and eating and all kinds of other good stuff. So even though during games this doesn't get used very well, although this is also where folks go once they've been tagged out of the game, they come up here, and I always tell them, come back here, turn all your gear off, and think about how you died so quickly. So this is the gazebo where pretty much everything starts and ends for the games that we've been planning out here. One of the really nice features of this park is the fact that it has a paved concrete path that goes all the way around this place. Now, the park is kind of oval shaped, so even though it's circular, there's still kind of a defined eastern and western side to this. We're on the western side of the park right now, and as you can see for at least 500, I mean this is pretty much a 700-foot stretch of wide open space here. This is a sniper's paradise for this park, because you can just plant yourself right over here and have coverage over this entire area. For laser tag, it's really easy to be able to get blasters that can fire 600, 700, 800 feet, no problem. So getting coverage over this area is really easy to do, because there's not a whole lot of cover over here either. This side, the western walk, is pretty much dominated by longer range players. The eastern walk, as I'll show you later, is not so conducive to long range fighting. Let's go check it out. This sign is kind of an understatement. Slippery when wet. This area has pretty much had constant water over it since the summer of 2008. We had a lot of rainwater come through here that pretty much messed with the entire water table that this park pretty much sits on. This park is actually built on a drainage basin for the surrounding neighborhood, so there's a lot of water that plays into this place. We call this area the slip zone, mainly because well, before it was covered with water, it would only occasionally be covered with water, and you get all this algae and stuff on there. So even though you could technically walk across it because it was dry, it was really slick stuff. This is where the western walk meets, at the southern part of the park. This is kind of a bottleneck that kind of keeps things a little bit more regulated. Just over here is a big hill that we call the flank, and I'll show you why in a little bit. But this point here, this is pretty much the only way to pass over from the southern part of the western walk to over where the flank is and the fort and a couple other places that I'll show you. But this scene here has been the site of lots of really epic battles because of how narrow it gets here, and you're pretty much forced to pass through this area or not. This is another really pivotal part of the park. To my left, we've got the flank. It's a big old hill that actually follows up and around this ridge that follows alongside this bridge, which we call the Bridge of Death. If you're familiar with Monty Python and the Holy Grail, you'll get that reference. The reason why we call it that, though, isn't just because a lot of people die on it, but because when you're on it, because of the nature of how it's built, you can pretty much tell whenever anyone's walking across it because of the way that the resonance works with walking across those boards and how it echoes through this park. It's really obvious when folks are sitting on that bridge. Also, it's a long stretch, and there's only one way on and off of it, so once you're on it, you're pretty much trapped. And I've even seen folks use this to great effect, where they actually trap squads that are making their way down here, and they cut them off at both ends and just pretty much have a shooting gallery. Now, the flank is also another really nice point. We call it the flank because this section actually comes back and around a little playground, which we affectionately call the fort. And this landform here pretty much makes a perfect flanking opportunity to attack that base. Let's go check it out. This is the path that goes up the hill to the flank, and you come up here, and you got a big clearing, but there's still lots of places and trees and stuff like that to hide behind. And then you've got this really long drop that takes you down over this over this big ravine that overlooks, you can see the bridge through the trees in there. This is a really excellent place to set up long-range shots and really give your opponent hell from just about any point that you've got a good vantage from. Now this path follows along, and we come right up behind this playground that is right there. We call this thing the fort. It's a playground, but it's pretty much the only structure in here aside from the gazebo, and it gets used pretty frequently as a base for one of the teams. Here's the fort here. Just on the other side of this path is the opposite side of the Bridge of Death. So not only can you attack the fort from that point, but also the hill behind here is that big landmass that we call the flank. So you can go up that hill that I showed you on the other side, follow along that path that we went through, and attack this guy from behind. This section is really tough to hold, which is why we use this part of the park a lot for objective-based games like Disarming the Bomb or Capture the Flag. So this guy, as childish as it may look, actually gets used pretty frequently for our games. And it's kind of the other central point for the park, the first being the gazebo that I showed you at the beginning. But this gets used more so in games, whereas that's more of a medium place and just kind of a place to start up and end games. This is the Eastern Walk. It's a very different setting than the Western Walk because there's a lot more bends in the path. There's much thicker cover. You've got the forest on this side and on the opposite side, as well as a creek that dissects the whole thing. Like I said, this whole park is pretty much a gigantic drainage basin for the surrounding suburban area. But there's a lot of cover in here. It's a lot harder to be effective with long-range attacks in here. Now, folks have set up at the bottom of the Eastern Walk and been able to cover much of this, but you've got a lot more, you've got a much better chance of actually coming up and getting closer to those guys who rely on long range to really give them the edge in these games. This is a part of the park that you would definitely utilize to try and advance on the fort, which is just south of here. It's also a really good spot to take off with the flag. When we're doing capture the flag games, if you try and go through this area, there's a lot more opportunities for you to zigzag out of the way of long-range players so that way they don't tag you out. If you try and take the flag through the Western Walk, it's much harder because if you get even one guy at the south of the Western Walk, he's probably going to tag you and you're not going to get that flag back to your base. So the Eastern Walk is a very strategic location for both sides. It's really hard to defend and to attack from just because there's so much cover in here, and just because of the fact that it's a direct route from the north to the south, but there's a lot of traps and little fun places to hide in here. I'd mentioned earlier that this park is a gigantic drainage basin for the surrounding area. This used to be a pretty active creek that was part of that drainage system, but in that big rainstorm that we had a couple years ago, when the water table shifted, this area, I mean, there's still rainwater that comes through here when it gets really heavy, but this used to be constantly flowing. Another thing is that this grass, when it gets really high and they go and mow over it, it pretty much conceals this entire area. You can technically hide in this big in this big tunnel here, but this has also been a bit of a safety hazard in the park, and I'm getting eaten alive by bugs down here as well. What happens is, if you're not paying attention and you're just looking straight, this looks like a flat portion, and we actually lost a guy, fell right down in here because he was walking along this path and just saw grass, and this was all covered up, and just fell right into this ditch. So folks have had to keep an eye out for this thing, but it has been nice to kind of be able to utilize this now because it's not quite so wet. I've seen folks really bunker down in here and make use of this. It's kind of got a really nice land level view of the Eastern Walk path here, and this is kind of one of the significant bends that's in the Eastern Walk. When that creek that I just showed you moved, it actually moved over here. This section here used to be just normal cut grass, and you could actually cross over to that patch of grass over there, no problems. But when this moved, this creek pretty much took over this area, and they haven't been able to mow over the area at all, and it's all pretty much become a little swamp in here. So this has really kind of cut off a lot of the access from the Eastern Walk, which we're still on, to the Western Walk, which is on the other side of that green lawn over there. It's changed a lot of how we've been able to play in this park, just for the simple fact that it's cut off some of the access to the eastern walk from the western side. A lot of times, if there was some guy who was running around in the park, you could cut them off by zipping through here and heading them off on the opposite side of the park. Now, unless you want to go through this swamp, you have to go all the way around this thing and come back around. So it takes more time to get to the other side, unless you're willing to trudge through all this icky, muddy, swampy stuff. This is pretty much a snapshot of how east differs from west. To my left, you have the western walk. You can see all that wide open space there. That's the sniper's paradise. To the east, to my right, you can see all the cover there that pretty much encapsulates the eastern walk. And these two very different sides allow for very different attacks. The point where I'm standing right now is actually where the northern team starts. This is the northernmost part of the park. If you go any further, you run into another road. So the other team generally starts at that fort that I showed you way down over there. And it's usually a toss-up. How are you going to approach the fort? Because it's usually an attacking team here and a defending team over at the playground. This point, though, really just kind of shows you the diverse nature of this park and why it's worked so well for us. It's a small enough park that you know, you don't get lost in it. You've got this path that can help you if you do manage to get lost somehow. It's in a nice central location in the middle of suburbia, so it's got a lot of access. Younger kids who live around this park see us out here playing, and they join us with the games. It's got the gazebo up there where we hold our cookouts. It's got a nice mix of terrain and cover for all different types of play styles. So this place really has worked well for us since 2006 for good reason. And that's why we love our Mission Park West. This is the home of the Fight Night for a reason. So I'm going to be doing a full walkthrough of this. The link below will take you to a full walkthrough. It will take a lot more time than just my little spots that I've gone through here, but it will give you a real sense for how big this place is and how diverse it is, while still not being, you know, overboard on being tough to navigate and things like that. We'll see you later.